In the name of Allah the Beneficent, the Most Merciful, I greet all of you, the listeners of the Sword of Resurrection show, with the greetings of peace in the Arabic language of Assalamu Alaikum. I am re-recording this show because we had some technical difficulties during the actual broadcast. So this is an edited version where you will actually be able to hear Brother Rudolph and experience the blessing of valued information in regards to the subject matter, which is disaster preparedness. We want you all, brothers and sisters, to be aware that it's very important that you share this link with your friends and family and those whom you love, because disaster preparedness is something that you just can't go without today. And all of our shows are protected by the Son of Man, and all participants are responsible solely for their comments and do not represent any one organization or business other than themselves. This goes for all of our broadcasts. Please make a donation at godswater7.com using our PayPal button and your credit card, because our show costs every month for us to keep it going and for me to actually re-record and, all the technical issues that we may have. Your donations will help us to defray the cost and help us to improve on those levels of technology that we need to improve on. Also, you can also make a donation at wepay.com/godswater1. That's GODSWATER and the number 1. Okay, and I started off the show, and I'm going to do again in this re-recording. I'm going to give you websites where you can actually get information about disaster relief and preparedness, starting with freedomfiles.org. They have lots of information on FEMA camps and what's going on with that. Also, you can go to areyouprepared.com. That's another website where you can get information on emergency preparedness. Also, intermedics.com. That's spelled intermedix.com for emergency preparedness solutions and information for EMS providers, fire department, law enforcement personnel, and even other first responders like those who volunteer. Lots of solutions, pre-hospital care, and things like that is available. All that kind of information is available on that site. Again, that's intermedics.com. Also, you have equipped.org. That's spelled EQUIPPED.org for equipment on survival, like life vests, survival kits, things of that nature. Also, we have realmilk.com. It was a little off the subject, but you want to survive with real milk, right? You need real milk for your bones, for your agility, for your skin. You're going to need that. So prepare your mind and body with real milk. Go to realmilk.com. Also, we want you to prepare with FEMA training courses. Now, FEMA training courses are one of the best things that you could ever do, because they give you certificates online that can help you when it comes to a disaster. You can be a better helpmeet to your community and to your people and to your family, when you get FEMA training certificates. I advise you that when you get your certificate, to print it in a small form so you can keep one in your wallet, and keep them in your wallet so that if an emergency does happen, you can present it to authorities and tell them that you're FEMA trained, and they will let you help out and even go in areas where you normally could not go. It may save you, your friends, your life, your family's life to have these courses, and you may be able to save other people's lives as well. So go to this website. It's training.fema.gov. I'm racing through this because we have little time and there's a whole lot of information that I need to bring in behind all these websites I'm giving you. training.fema.gov/is/. All right, just go to that website, training.fema.gov, and you'll get on those courses, and you'll be so edified by the information that you get. Also, go to ready.gov. That's the government disaster preparedness website. So you can get a lot of information there, and I believe you also can register for information in that can be sent to your email. Also, the Millions More Movement Disaster Management Program website. That is MMMDISASTER Management, MANAGEMENT.com. That's MMMDisasterManagement.com. Go there and you can find the Millions More Movement is doing lots of great things to help you to stay informed with regards to disaster preparedness. As promised at the Million Man March, these institutions will be set up to assist our people in times of need. Also, we have the Weather Channel. Of course, that is a must. You have to tune into weather.com every day. You got to know what the weather is. You know, many of us have it on our cell phones, on our smartphones, you know, PDAs, whatever you're using, iPads. Have weather.com locked in as a shortcut on your computer module. Also, emergencypacks.com. That is great for food packs that you can use for your go bags or away bags. It's very important that you have those. Now we're going to go right into the questions and the question and answer period that we had with Rudolph-t-Muhammad, who is a director of a director at the emergency service unit in Brooklyn that him and his father owns and operates. It's a family business, and they've done so much for the community. We want you to listen, keep your ears on, get your pencils and pads ready, and if you have to hit rewind and pause or whatever you have to do, but get this information out to as many people as you can, and let's remember to take notes because this information is vital. Ladies and gentlemen, to our listeners, Brother Rudolph-Muhammad and myself, who will be asking questions of him on your behalf. There's one iota I have to mention before we get started. In our last show, we mentioned that the show with Sister Mildred Muhammad was our 5th show. That was an error because we counted a test show that was in our queue as a show accidentally, and we thought that was our 5th show, but actually it was our 4th show. This show is our 5th show, the show with Rudolph-Muhammad. So we want to apologize to Sister Mildred and our listeners for that slight error in calculating. We did again counted a test show where we were testing our broadcasting systems. So without any further ado, let's move on to the interview with Brother Rudolph-Muhammad. Thank you.
Oh, okay. That's a twofold question. One, I got started with my knowledge of it, and in doing the work of emergency medical service in the military. I was in the United States Navy, and I was on board a ship, and I was actually studying to be the corpsman on the actual ship I was on. Guided missile destroyer, 412 people, and then on to an aircraft carrier where there were 16,000 people. And so that's what got me into the medical field. Upon getting out of the military and coming back to New York, I came back. I was working as a chef because that was one of the passions I had. I went to culinary school, and I was working as a chef, and the job EMT became available through the New York City Emergency Medical Service, and one of my customers every day was a black chief, which was only one of 3 at that time that EMS had, and he was one of my regular customers every day, and we started talking, and he had spoken to me about it, told me the job was available, why don't I apply? And I applied, and I ended up getting called for the job. I applied like in the end of November after Thanksgiving, and by February 22nd, 1988, I was in the EMS Academy at Fort Totten.
Praise be to Allah.
That's what got my career going. Right now, I'm currently the director of the Veteran Stuyvesant Volunteer Ambulance Corps, a.k.a. Save a Life Rescue Squad. And yes, brother, I am very happy because, 1, I'm working for myself. 2, I'm working in the service of humanity, primarily, but directly my people. And, again, I'm working for one of the hardest bosses in the world, which is my father.
Wow. And he started the business?
Yes. He he started the Bedford Stuyvesant Volunteer Ambulance Corps July 15, 1988. And he started it in response to his niece getting hit by a car one day and laying in the street for over 30 minutes and actually dying in his arms. And at that time, he was a supervisor for New York City Emergency Medical Service. So if you can imagine how paralyzing and helpless that feeling is, that you're working for a job, and the very nature of the job that you do, you can't get the help that you need from one of your own family members. When I hear the word disaster preparedness, and I think about my people, what comes to my mind?
Yes, sir.
Not ready. Okay, well, let me start it by saying this.
Go ahead.
When we talk about disaster preparedness, it means different things to different people. And what we have to differentiate is what type of disaster are we talking about, because a disaster, what I may consider a disaster to me, may not be a disaster to you, and what may seem very mild and melancholy to me may be a disaster for you. To a mother, a single mother who has 4 children that she works with every day, trying to get them up and out of the house on time so that she can get to work on time. She has a schedule and a routine for them. And if one day one of the children don't cooperate with the routine, that could mean a disaster for her, especially if she has the type of job where she's been chronically late. She's on attendance check. If they told her, well, if you're late one more time, you're going to lose your job. You see what I mean?
Yes, let's be more specific. We're talking about floods, major floods, tsunamis, earthquakes.
Disasters. Okay, all right.
Natural disasters and man. Let's be specific. Let's talk about those
disasters and man-made disasters.
Yes, sir.
Natural disaster. When we talk about natural disasters, we're talking about forces of nature to which we have no control. So all we can do is get the knowledge of what could happen, which in the world of disaster preparedness, we use the words hazards and vulnerabilities. And what we try to do is mitigate or prepare for the worst case scenario, and then if it be the will of God and we survive the disaster, then now we have to go through the process of recovering from that disaster and putting our lives back together in order to live again.
Right.
When we're talking about man-made disasters, this can mean anything, because a man-made disaster, as you just said, can spark off into a natural disaster.
Right.
So it can bring a whole plethora of different scenarios down on a person. That the main thing is the knowledge. If you don't have the knowledge of what could be, what is, or what might be, then you're really in a disastrous situation, because you don't have a mental framework that will allow you to come up with ideas or use ingenuity to try and circumvent a cascading type things that happen one after another.
Like the domino effect.
Exactly. Right. So you had a flood. Okay. So now because of the flood, now you have all of this water you have to deal with. But also because of the flood, there are things in the water that will affect your health. Now, because of the flood and the stuff in the water, all the supplies you had are under the water, so they're no good for you now. Now you have to get out of where you are, and you have no way of really doing it because the transportation is under the water. You see, these cascading effects. And if you try and deal with them all at one time, it becomes a daunting task because it's overwhelming. So you have to have the knowledge of how to deal with and how to actually piece apart the disaster so that you can work on it piece by piece in order to get to the eventual end of it, which is the recovery phase. Okay. Now, there are two different people talking now. Now, Rudolph, the person, is going to say, you better get ready. Brother Rudolph-t-Muhammad, who tries to practice the teachings of the most honorable Elijah Muhammad, will say that we need to train our people what to do, and sometimes we can't wait for them to come to us. We have to go to them, because if you don't have the knowledge that something could happen or that you're even in a perilous or a vulnerable situation, then you will never take the necessary steps to help provide the things that you need, because you're not even aware that you're in harm's way. So this is where Scripture says, the strong must bear the infirmities of the weak. So those that know are responsible for those that don't know. Well, one of the best resources that we have is each other. And what I will say is, for those that want to get prepared, those that want to learn what their hazards and vulnerabilities are based on geographically where they live, then they should contact me and set up a time where I can come and bring a body of information to them and their loved ones that will help intellectually bring them up to par into the modern day and time, so that physically they can start to prepare for not what might happen, for what is inevitable. And I could
Let me ask you also.
Yes, sir.
Oh, no, go ahead with your number, brother.
My cell number is 347-870-0721. That's 347-870-0721. My office number is area code 718-453-4617. That's 718-453-4617, and that is the Bedford-Stuyvesant Volunteer Ambulance Corps, a.k.a. Save a Life Rescue Squad. The same way that you prepare adults, train them. Scripture says, train a child the way he should grow. It doesn't say teach, it says train. Meaning the children do not have a comprehensive knowledge or understanding of certain things. So you train them to perform certain acts until they grow into that understanding of what they're doing and why. So if you train them how to evacuate, train them how to get out of a smoke-filled room or a fire in an apartment, train them how to use a fire extinguisher to put out a fire, train them how to access the 911 system or call for help, train them how to get from point A to point B in case something happens. All of these training scenarios parents can do on a regular basis with their children while they have them. Train them how to cross the street, how to pay attention to the vehicles, not so much the light. Just because the light is red doesn't mean that the driver is going to hit the brakes of the car and stop the car. They need to be trained in a mode of safety awareness, and then they need to be trained in a mode of emergency preparedness. So all of this is training that can be done with very little effort because children are easier to train than adults because they're more willing to do, they're more capable to do, and it becomes almost fun, like a game to them, and they're just up for the challenge. Well, to someone like that, well, not so much what I would say to them, but what I would say to those that are around them. Again, Scripture says, the strong must bear the infirmities of the weak. It is up to us to set systems in place that provide for our elders and our infirmed and our handicapped residents that live in our communities. We, those of us that have the use of all of our faculties, must put together systems where we know where all of our elderly and handicapped are, where we know, and they're not called elderly and handicapped. In my world of disasters or disaster management, they're called vulnerable populations. See, so it's a terminology game here, word game, as well as a psychological game. So we have to educate our people to the fact that they don't know, and we have to educate them to what they need to know and what must be done. And we don't have a lot of time to do it. Oh, I can answer that question very quickly. Emphatically, no. I don't know of any plan that is on the website or that is on a table or that is in a book of any city official that is guaranteed to be foolproof and to work to evacuate any residents of the city of New York in case of any type of disaster. One, there are too many people here. Two, there are too many ignorant people. And not ignorant in a bad way or not using that word in a demeaning or disrespectful way, using that word in a very humble way, saying that they just don't know. And because they don't know, they will spin off into a panic. And because of panic, it will cause an enormous amount of loss of life because of fear. Oh, yes, without a doubt. Again, major loss of life to the emergency, not emergency medical service, but to the emergency medical response network, because it was police officers, firefighters, EMS, ancillary workers, regular John Q. public that was out there that was helping. All of those people who attempted to aid the people on that day put themselves in harm's way, and some gave all, and lost their lives trying to help others. But this is the psychology of a rescuer anyway. When something goes on, you have three different psychologies going on at the same time. You have the psychology the psychology of the victim, you have the psychology of the rescuer, and you have the psychology of the manager, all going on in different heads at the same exact time. The psychology of the rescuer is not thinking of himself, but thinking of the person, the victim, that he is trying to rescue out of harm's way. And sometimes inadvertently, the rescuers lose their lives trying to save the lives of others. The mindset of, or the psychology of the manager is how to do the most good for the most amount of people based on the resources that are allocated to them. And the mindset of the victim is, woe is me. Let me say it this way, as to trying to keep a positive note and an enlightening mindset.
Right.
The various agencies that are out here that are designed, created, and funded to do the very work that we're talking about right now, they're only as effective as the management or the direction that they are given from those who are heading up these agencies.
Mm-hmm.
If those who are heading up these agencies do not have a single or a singular determined effort to actually help, then it's just smoke and mirrors. Now, every agency is using the same material, whether it's the Red Cross, CERT, FEMA, whatever. So it's the same soup, just reheated. A go bag is a go bag. Okay, an evacuation plan is an evacuation plan. I don't care whose label is on the paperwork or whose terminology or logo is on. So that's standard. That's the same. But who is actually going out to the vulnerable populations and making the inroads to actually teach and train the vulnerable populations of what they must do for themselves to save their own lives. Because when the disaster happens, all resources will be diverted to that particular disaster, leaving communities abandoned. And
that's like what happened in Trina.
Like what constantly happens. Disaster after disaster. And if those communities have not engaged themselves in the act of self-help and self-reliance, then they will be left victims to the abandonment of the system and to their own ignorance. Well, that conversation there could spark off into a whole nother thing. Let me just say it this way. There are what a fault line is, and here in New York City, there's a fault line that runs right up through Harlem. And depending on the magnitude of the earthquake, that fault line could cause the island of Manhattan to split from where it is now, or the way we know it now, into fragments where the Hudson River, the East River, and any other major body of water will come rushing in because the land mass itself will give way. I'll say it that way. For those who may not have the knowledge of what a fault line is, or not the knowledge of seismography or any topology or any of that,
right?
So they can just understand what we're talking about. Imagine being in a bathtub and having, let's say, a large piece of soap floating in the bathtub. Now imagine breaking that piece of soap into other little pieces. They all sail or float off into their own directions because now the water comes in between it and completely carries it off into whatever direction the water current is going, because they have broken off from the larger piece of soap. That's what will happen to Manhattan Island if they have an earthquake of a sizable proportion, because the foundation has already been so weakened over the course of the years due to other smaller earthquakes and shocks and just time itself and geological conditions. So what does that mean for the people on the island? It means that there will be shaking, water main or water pipes will burst, gas lines will rupture, electrical lines will rupture, and power lines will then drop to the ground, live power lines. So now you have live electricity and salt water in the same place at the same time. You have masses of people not knowing what to do, running helter-skelter back and forth. You have gigantic, tall buildings full of concrete, steel, and glass, whose very foundation will be upset, causing those buildings to topple over and to fall to the ground. Well, the trick is, I used the word earlier, mitigation. Mitigation means to prepare for beforehand.
Right.
So what people should be doing is storing drinking water. And in storing drinking water, what you want to think of is a gallon of drinking water per person per day. Now, just saying that is one thing, but now you have to take the human factor into play. How physically fit are these people that we're talking about?
Right.
Because if you're not a physically fit person, or if you're not a person who does any kind of training or who is engaged in the art of fasting, then your nerves take over, and now you're nervous. And because you're nervous and the level of anxiety rises, all you want to do is eat and drink now. So now you eat and drink up all of your provisions in no time, and now you have no provision to sustain you.
Wow.
Or what is your physical condition like? Are you so physically unfit that you can't walk a mile carrying your backpack? Or you can't walk down 6 flights of stairs, or pull yourself up, or do a push-up? What is your level of physical fitness like right now? All of these things key in and are key factors in talking about surviving a disaster. Well, of course, you're going to need to be able to see where you're going. So flashlights with batteries, because if you have flashlights, you have to have extra batteries. Or if you get self-contained flashlights that work off of crank power or, solar power, whatever it is, but you need some form of light. You will need, again, I spoke about the water. You're gonna need some form of nutrition.
Right.
Something that's going to be able to give the body energy to make it through the time that you're going through. You're going to need appropriate clothing to help shelter you from the outside elements as well as to protect you from the environment in which you'll be in. You'll need to have a pair of sturdy footwear to help you because there's going to be a lot of walking that's going to have to be done. You need something
We're not
to
talking
protect
about
your
pumps.
head. No, we're not talking about 6-foot pumps. We're not talking about Prada or Gucci or Louis Vuitton. We're talking about some Red Wing or some Timberlands or some type of boots, sturdy boots to protect your feet.
And that's no endorsement to Timberland. We just, you to get the point.
Oh, yes, without doubt. No, I am not endorsing any of those products. I'm just telling you, I just use the brand name so our people can understand what I'm talking about.
Exactly. Would you recommend a gas mask?
I would recommend a system that will help protect your respiratory tract from the enemies of your respiratory tract. And that's dust, that's particles, that's gas, that's smoke. Any of those items that, if inhaled into your lungs, can cause havoc in a person and cause them to lose their ability to breathe. So whether it's a gas mask, whether it's a self-contained breathing apparatus, whether it's an escape hood, whether it's a N100 or N95 particulate respirator mask, it depends on, again, where you are, what environment you're in, and what you're trying to do. But you definitely need something to protect your airway so you're not just breathing in globs of things that will kill you in the long run. That's one of the biggest problems that happened to those who were down at the unfortunate Ground Zero site during 9/11. Their respiratory tract was so badly infected that now, 11 years later, people are still dying from things that they inhaled and can't get out of their lungs now. Well, there's no substitution for a good fire extinguisher. Sooner or later, you will need one. So go to Home Depot, Lowe's, True Value, or whatever store out there deals with them, and find the best one that you can at the price you can afford and get it into your house. But what you need to get is what's called an ABC fire extinguisher. An ABC fire extinguisher is an all-purpose fire extinguisher, so it can be used on any class fire to extinguish it. The best thing that a family can do is to plan ahead. The best thing listeners can do is when they finish listening to this broadcast, they can sit down with all of their loved ones and organize and plan now.
Right.
For
right now.
the inevitable. Right now. Meaning call an out-of-town relative and let them know that in the event something happens here where we live at in New York City, everybody has been notified to call you, Aunt Sally, because you're down in Alabama, and it may be easier to make a long-distance call than it will to make a local call because all the towers may be down. So everybody will check in with Aunt Sally, and Aunt Sally will be able to do a roll call to know who is checked in and who hasn't. Also, for them to be able to try and plan out now to know where are you going to go? Where will the family meet up if this should happen? If we lose contact with each other due to an earthquake, due to a flood, due to a major interruption in our daily activities, how will we communicate with each other? Where will we all meet up at? And these are the hard things, the hard questions that families must sit down and map out right now, making copies of all of their identification, insurance information, and making copies of them. And even if you have to go to notary publics to get certain documents notarized so that they are considered legal documents and can be utilized in the time of disaster to prove one's identity, and preparing it in Ziploc plastic bags so it's safe from moisture and from water, and it's in, packed away in your go bag. Now this is the hard one here, because I don't know any people that are in my surroundings that have spare cash. I don't know anybody that has spare cash. But we need to have some kind of money in small denominations in our go bags so that you will have money to utilize for necessities during a disaster, because nobody's making change in a disaster. So maybe you need to have $50 if you can spare $50 to tuck away, or $100 to tuck away in singles, and put them in your go bag and have it there, as our grandparents used to say, save it for a rainy day. Well, that depends on whom you ask. I would say ultimate responsibility lies with the parents, because God has commissioned us as parents to be stewards of the life that He has blessed us to be in stewardship of. So, because of that, we are ultimately responsible. Now, in being responsible, that means we have to do certain things. So every parent should know what the plan is in the school that their children go to in the event of a natural disaster. What is in writing as far as that school's plan for those students? Because sometimes it's called early dismissal. Okay, so you have chaos going on in the street, and they're doing an early dismissal, which means they're forcing the children out of the security of the building into the dangerous streets. So you have the children being forced out of school into the streets to try and make their way home, with the parents nowhere around, because the parents can't get to them because of whatever the natural disaster is. That's the typical response. But again, parents need to know, and it's information that should be readily available. Just go to your school and ask, what is the disaster or contingency plan in the case of a natural disaster for my child being in this school? And then you need to sit with your child and work out a plan with your child that if this should happen, then this is what you do. Or work with other adults that are in the area. In the case that something happened, can you pick my child up and secure my child for me until I can get to you? It takes a village to raise a child.
To raise a child, that's right. And that's important. You also mentioned the chaos.
And excuse me, brother, so let me say this, because remember now, we are in the age of predators, and there are so many sexual deviants in our communities, so many child rapists and just unscrupulous individuals who are lurking about, stalking, our children, that we don't know who we can trust our children with. So that becomes another issue for the parents. Well, let me throw this out there. Okay. Some contingency plans of cities are that they will open up certain areas called shelters or reception centers for people to check into in the event that there is a disaster. Well, here's one of those questions. Is the glass half empty or half full? Okay, that reception, quote-unquote, center that you check into, is it a reception center or is it a modern-day detention camp now? Because once you check in, are you free to check out when you get ready? Are you free to roam about the country or the neighborhood? And what if martial law is imposed because of civil unrest? Then what becomes of your ability to move freely about the country? So all of these questions and more need to be asked, but more so people need to know what the very unpopular answer is. Well, we have to remember a term, and it's called COG. C as in Charlie, O as in Oscar, G as in government. And that stands for continuity of government. And what that means is that at all costs, the government must be maintained and preserved so that it will go on. And that is at the expense of anyone. No one is indispensable at the expense of COG, or the continuity of government. What does that mean? That means that it's no longer a black-white thing. It's no longer a you or my thing. It's those who, it's the haves and the have-nots. It's those who are deemed affluent enough in society that they can dictate terms and dictate policies, and those who are, unfortunately, those who get those policies dictated too. So if you are in a situation or a section or happen to be in a geographic location that is deemed not viable, and they cord that section off, then whatever is there is deemed that it's irretrievable, it's irreconcilable, it's hopeless, it's lost, it's not worth anything, so no resources go there and no thought is even given to sparing or saving the lives of those people there. They are considered or they're deemed as expendable. Well, again, we're talking survival. And in talking survival, the thing that pops into one's head is at all costs to remain alive after something. Well, the definition of survive is to remain alive after ... after something has happened. So in surviving or in trying to survive, the question is, what is it that a person will eat in trying to survive? Hell, there are people who will resort to cannibalism in that time, for their own survival. We don't believe in that, but there are many people that do. What I will say is, again, you need to think of foods that are, one, high in protein, but that are low in sodium, because sodium or salt will cause you to be thirsty, which will cause you to have to drink. What you need is energy to keep you, to sustain you, and to keep you moving. So some of those power bars or whatever, but then again, okay, now we have to think about it. What is our normal dietary law like, and what is our normal dietary habits like? So, yeah, is it kosher? Is it halal? Does it have this in it? Does it have that in it? These are idiosyncrasies that are major psychological issues for the masses of the people. And so you have to find those items that are out here on the market that fit into the psychology of what you believe and try and store that. Well, because we are on the airwaves, I have to be very careful how I answer that. But let me say this. In a disaster, what's yours is what you can protect. And that goes across the board. That just goes for your equipment, for your food supply. That goes for your wife, your daughter, even your very life. If you can't protect it, it's not yours, because the savages will be ravaging the communities and the streets. Now, what will go in our favor is, of course, the mercy of Almighty God Allah, but also what have you done prior to that? Have you been out there in the community trying to get the community to prepare themselves for the inevitable day that is coming? That will help to, or may help to act as a mercy for you, your family, because they may think, no, that's the brother who kept coming to us to help us prepare. No, leave him alone. See, the others that may come to your aid at that time. But we must be found working right up until the very end. We have to be out there in the community with the people, constantly talking to the people and teaching them what they don't know and what they need to know. Don't take for granted that everybody knows what you know. So whatever little bit of information that you know and understand, then share that with someone that you come into contact with and begin to work together so that united we can amass the things that we'll need so that when the deal does go down, it's not just you individually or me individually, but it's the we, as the Holy Quran speaks of, the soft pronouns of us, you know, together, working together in order to survive. Well, it's an easy question for me to say, but it's hard for someone else to say because sentimental value means a lot to people, and it helps to go with their state of mind that they're in. But once the disaster happens, what families should do structurally, on the place that you're in, is it structurally sound? Okay. Is it in imminent danger of collapsing on you and your family, which means you really need to get out of it? Or is it sturdy enough that you can stay in it to provide you shelter from what is going on outside? What is the area like? The things that you're salvaging, are the immediate needs? Food, clothing, shelter. What are you going to use these items for? What do you have? And remember, what you can only carry a certain amount of things. So what are those things going to be? Because if you can't carry it, then what good is it?
Exactly.
And remember, at that time, you may end up having to now move to a different location. So again, you're talking about being able to carry something and still move at the same time. So all these things we have to think about. Well, the sentimental value, again, helps or goes toward one's mental health and what their ability is to deal with and function with society or life the way it is. Some people are looking for those comfort things that give them measures of comfort and ease of mind that helps them make it through the next day to the next day. So if a person can't find a focal point or a fulcrum or a central point so that they can balance out their emotions, then they become highly distraught, and then they are a danger to themselves and to others because they're imbalanced or off balance. So the best thing I can say to that is we have to try and focus on that which is real, that which is tangible, and that which is common sense.
Right,
which is
essential.
a hard thing to do. Which is a hard thing to do in a disaster because a lot of people are in shock and they're operating in a state of shock. So common sense is not a reality then.
As if really going.
That's always good. It's always good.
Right.
Just like you learn how to tie your shoe through repetition. You have to rehearse and rehearse and rehearse things so that the responses become almost like second nature. So that when the event happens, your body may respond properly. No one actually knows how they're going to respond until the actual deal goes down. But you can kind of help to offstage the inevitability of things by practicing the way that you want it to be, so that maybe, inshallah, it will go that way when it actually happens.
God willing. And we've definitely...
And let me say this. With all of this that we're talking, the most important thing that we have not touched on yet is that a person's mental state must be one of sound mind and body. And the only way that you achieve that is through a firm knowledge of who is actually in control of the time in which we live and what must be done. And so we must get a firm handle and a firm knowledge on who is God, who is the devil, and who are we.
Yes.
And once we have a firm knowledge and understanding of those three questions, then we can successfully navigate the minefield that nature may end up putting out there, or because of a man-made disaster that may end up becoming our reality. And those knowledges that we are holding on to will help us to make the proper decision at the proper time. Yes. The last words I would like to say is that, and I take great pride in this, and again, the disaster preparedness community is what it is. I have a lot of partners out there, a lot of people that I work with and I train with, and we work together on disaster preparedness. Just this Saturday, with the International Preparedness Network, Brother Aton Edwards, Brother Barry Crumley, myself, and a few others, we did a disaster walk from the tip of the Bronx, where I came, actually came from the Westchester County line, and we walked. I walked all the way down to 155th Street before I broke off, but they went all the way down to 125th Street, and we're planning to do this all summer, to walk throughout the 5 boroughs to show people how to evacuate when certain things happen. That was an evacuation in case Indian Point nuclear reactor ended up blowing up and people had to get away from it. So that one was designed for that. But the whole thing is, what I'm saying is, get out and do something. Get out and walk a mile or two. Make yourself physically fit. Get out and learn something so that you know something more tomorrow than you do today. And make sure that you, again, know that you know who is God, who is the devil, and who are you. And with those comprehensive knowledges, you may be prepared to survive another day.
And that's very important. Oh, Brother Rudolph, thank
I don't want to put this out there yet because it would be a bit premature, but we are planning something, a major event for National Disaster Preparedness Month. Keep abreast of WBLS, BAI, WWRL. They'll be announcing things that'll be coming up, more evacuation walks, a thing called Escaping the Grid. Escaping the Grid. So keep an eye out for that, and go to the website readyforanything.org. Readyforanything.org. A lot of information will be on there.